Braves were blown out on Tuesday night behind a terrible start from Ronaldo López. What's the concern level here? Let's talk about it. Yes, welcome on in to Braves Today, your daily source for news, notes, and updates on your Atlanta Braves. I'm Lindsay Crosby of BravesToday.com. You can follow me on social media at Crosby Baseball. We're proudly part of the Belief Podcast Network and presented to you by FanDuel. Download the FanDuel app or go to FanDuel.com to get started. I was asked a great question last night about the most surprising slumps to start the year, hitter, pitcher, and all that. And we'll get to that in the third segment. We'll talk about the bullpen being down for some shuffling. That's probably going to happen between when I record this and when it comes out. But first, we got to talk about last night's game. Braves get beat by the Nationals in an ugly contest. It's 11-4, and this game had everything bad that you do not want to see. Atlanta pitchers walked 12 batters. They had more walks than strikeouts. Ronaldo López didn't record an out in the second inning before leaving the game. They allowed multiple stolen bases. It was a very ugly game. And we're not going to get too much into all of the other ugliness of this game because I kind of want to stick with Ronaldo López. Nightmare outing for Ronaldo López. He throws 46 pitches in the first inning. Just doesn't have his first out until he's thrown 35-something pitches and it's already 3-0. Comes back for the second. Jose Suarez is already getting up. Comes back for the second. Can't record an out before they pull him. And there was some of everything here, right? He walks 3. He gives up a home run in the second inning, lead off the second inning. It was the leadoff hitter. It was James Wood coming back around to lead off the second. All 9 guys came to the plate for the Nationals in the first inning. Just ugly game. But the stuff for López specifically, okay? 4 runs on 5 hits, 3 walks, 1 strikeout. They did give up the solo shot. His ERA is now up to 3.74, which isn't, all told, that terrible of an ERA. 3.74 is not awful, right? But it's the process. It's the way some of this stuff happened. And I think now we've seen a trend of 2 starts. Ever since the Angels fight, he's not been the same pitcher. The 3 starts before, really 2 starts before and the Angels start combined was 2 earned runs, 4 total runs, and 15 2/3 innings, 10 hits. 3 of those were home runs. Like, he was getting tagged on that kind of stuff a lot, right? 5 walks to 13 strikeouts, had 1 hit by pitch, had 1 wild pitch. In the 2 starts he's made since then, he's allowed 7 earned runs, 8 overall runs on 10 hits and 6 walks in 6 innings. 6+ innings, because again, he pitched into the second yesterday, but didn't record an out. And when you look at what's going on here, it's not any problem with the individual pitches, the pitch shapes. The shape of the fastball, pretty much the same last night as it was the outing before, as it was before the fight. The velocity, it's hard to really judge the velocity thing here. He was half a mile an hour off from his average this season, but also it was colder, blah, blah, blah. And he, more so than anybody else on the staff, is prone to ramp it up and to pull it back as needed. So he just isn't missing bats. And like the 4-seamer, you don't always miss bats with a 4-seamer. He had 2 whiffs on 14 swings. And that was something a lot of people called out after the game about that was an issue, was he only had 2 whiffs on 14 swings. But when you look at other successful outings he's had this year, he sometimes gets to that same point. He's put up very, very low whiff percentages on the four-seamer. His bread and butter is the slider and the curveball. Those were the pitches where you didn't see a lot of, one, swings, period, two, a lot of whiffs, and three, the ability to even land them in the zone. 16 sliders last night. He drew 6 swings on those, 1 whiff, 1 called strike. 38% zone rate. Curveball, he threw 6 of them, 17% zone rate. And he got 1 swing. They connected on it, but it was a foul ball. He just did not miss bats with the slider and curveball last night. And I'm kind of at the point of, it's now a 2-start trend. I don't know what happens. Is there an underlying issue mechanically, injury-wise? What is the reason that he's now struggled in 2 consecutive starts? And I say struggle, it was 3 earned runs last time out over 5 innings. It wasn't like it was awful versus Miami. But compared to where he was in the first couple starts, it was definitely behind where he's been. I don't know if we're going to see some sort of injured list placement. I don't know what the solution is here. They're not going to move him to the bullpen. You're going to see a lot of bullpen moves today. We'll get to that in a few minutes. But you're not going to see him get moved back there simply because they need starters. When everybody is back and healthy, is there a conversation to be had there? Sure. I honestly think, I'd rather send Grant Holmes back there simply because Grant Holmes is a different pitcher as a starter than he is as a reliever. Grant Holmes as a starter has a much more significant walk issue than he does as a reliever. And it's at the point where he's more valuable from a WAR perspective as a reliever than a starter, being that utility pitcher than he is when he's in the rotation all the time. As a starter, Grant Holmes, 24.7% strikeout rate, 10% walk rate in his time as a starter. The ERA is not terrible. 3.93, right? Like below 4 ERA as a starter. But a lot of the underlying stuff isn't as good. 4.31 fielded independent pitching. The expected ERA is kind of in that same ballpark, things like that. He's given up 1/3 of all the batted balls against him as a starter are hard contact. When he's a reliever, it's an ERA of just over 3. It's like 3.03. But fielding independent pitching is like a 2.41. I mean, he is, and a lot of guys are better in relief because they can air it out in short stints and all that stuff, but this includes long relief for Grant Holmes. This includes him pitching multiple innings and all that kind of stuff. So if I had to pick one of these guys, the first one I'm moving is probably Grant Holmes and not Ronaldo López. But if López keeps doing this, I think it's more likely that Holmes goes to the bullpen over López. I think it's more likely that López goes on the injured list because something underlying is wrong than I do Holmes, if that makes sense. In just a minute, let's talk about Spencer Strider's rehab start and how the Braves might make some changes for the bullpen today. We'll do that next, right here on Braves Today. But first, today's episode is brought to you by our friends at Grand Slam Getaways. If you've dreamt of going on the ultimate baseball road trip, this one's for you. Grand Slam Getaways offers bucket list baseball bus trips designed for fans who love the game and want to travel in style. All these trips depart from Atlanta, include field-level tickets, 3-star hotels, daily breakfast, and a full slate of ballparks and other activities. Each trip includes at least 2 Braves road games, plus appearances by former MLB players, giveaways, and fun side trips to places like the Louisville Slugger Museum, the Bull Durham filming locations, and more. Whether you're retired, a baseball nut, or just looking for a parent-child summer adventure, this is a stress-free way to hit the road with fellow fans. There are 3 trips to choose from. I'm sorry, there's now 2 trips to choose from. June to the Midwest and July to the Northeast. All time to match up with some Braves road games. So reserve your spot now with a small deposit. Go to grandslam-getaways.com to make this summer a Grand Slam. Check it out now, grandslam-getaways.com to let the baseball adventure begin. Welcome back to Braves Today, Lindsay Crosby. If you hear a lot of background noise, my co-host Bandit is just going to town on a bone back there. And I can't seem to get him to chill. We're just going to have to live with it. My apologies for the background noise, the scratching, whatever the noise you're hearing in the recording here. Spencer Strider made a rehab start last night for the Gwinnett Striper. Sean Murphy was in the lineup and caught him. And this was a really interesting outing. Really interesting game, period. The Stripers win this one 2-0, despite not having a hit. They get no hit by Jacksonville, and they score 2 runs and win. The explanation there, in the 6th inning, outfielder Brewer Hicklin leads off the bottom of the 6th by getting hit by a pitch, and then Jim Jarvis, right behind him, also gets hit by a pitch. So runners on first and second, no outs here. A wild pitch lets Hicklin score. Jarvis goes up to second. Braxton Garrett tries to then pick off Jarvis, and a throwing error lets Jarvis go to third. So the Nacho Alvarez hits a sac fly to score Jarvis. So 2 runs come in the inning, despite no hits. And in the entire game combined, there was 1 hit allowed. Spencer Strider allowed a weak single in one of his innings. I'm trying to remember which one. But Strider went 4 1/3. He had 1 walk. He walked Kemp Alderman. He got him down 1-2, and he was throwing a bunch of stuff off the plate, seeing if he'd chase. Fastball just missed the corner up and away. 4-seamer off the knee high, but off the plate. Tried to get him to chase a slider down on the way. He wouldn't do it, and he walks. And then the single was a slider that hung at the very top of the zone, and catcher Joe Mack sent it out to center. But other than that, 8 strikeouts for Strider, 1 hit, 1 walk. And when you look at what Spencer Strider did, like the actual metrics of the pitches. Because remember, in AAA, we have Statcast. We've had Statcast data now for 2 seasons on the guys in AAA. I wrote about Jim Jarvis last week, and I was able to use Statcast type stats to talk about what he had done so far. In the outing, Strider threw 34 fastballs. He was limited to 65 pitches here. So 34 fastballs, 25 sliders, 4 curveballs, 2 changeups. He got 15 whiffs, 10 of those came on the slider, 4 on the 4-seamer, 1 on the curveball. He only got 2 swings on the curveball. So whiff rate of 50% for all that matters, but a whiff rate of 67% on the slider. You'll take that. The fastball, again, 4 of 15 on the whiffs, but also 8 called strikes. And they put 3 of them into play. None of the balls put into play off a Strider were hard hit. 6 total balls into play. Again, the 1 hit came off the hanging slider. But when you look at the pitch movement, the 4-seam fastball, he averaged 95.9. He touched 98.1. So he, in essence, averaged 96, touched 98. The 2023 season, which I think is a better analog of what he legitimately can be, other than 2022, because part of 2022 was him working as a reliever, remember? The 2023 season, he averaged 97.2 miles an hour. He averaged 96 last night. So, still a little bit off from a velocity perspective from where he was in 23. But last year, his velo was lower than that. His velo was low 95s. So better velocity base than he was in last year. His induced vertical break on the four-seam fastball was very good. He averaged 18 inches of induced vertical break last night. Back in 2023, he was at 18.4. Last night, he was at 18. The whole issue last season was he was sitting around 16 and change, and late in the year, he was able to get it up to about 17. So the four-seam fastball, from a shape perspective, is almost exactly where it was in 2023. And it actually had more arm side run. I'm sorry, more horizontal movement than it had in 23. 23 was 18.4 inches of vertical break, 6 inches of arm side movement. Yesterday was 18 inches of induced vertical break and 9 inches of horizontal movement. So you could argue that it's maybe even a better shape than it was in 23. We always talk about the vertical on this thing, right? But there you go. He's lined up to start on Sunday. They said originally they were probably going to need 3 rehab starts for him, and he only went 65 pitches. Their goal would be to push him to 85 or 90 on Sunday if he pitches on regular rest. They could also push him out, have him start on Tuesday with extra rest, but I'm guessing they'll have him on Sunday against Jacksonville simply because if he does, in fact, if they want to push him to Tuesday, he has to change affiliates. Gwinnett's on the road in Charlotte, and so they would either need to have him travel with the team to Charlotte for the rehab start or drop him down at a competition level to a different level of the minors. And I'd rather him face AAA hitters than face AA or high A or whatever for his final rehab start. So I'm guessing he makes a start on Sunday. And if that happens, we could see him back in Atlanta as soon as the next Friday, which would be right. Like, I think Friday is May 1st. So he could be back the end of April, right? Make a start the beginning of May for the Braves. So what would probably happen there would be the Braves face the Tigers the middle of next week. Thursday is a day game. Thursday the 30th is a day game. And then after the game, they fly to Colorado to face the Rockies on the road. Don't love the idea of Strider's first start back being in Colorado. But at the same time, you got to figure out where to put him in somewhere. So there you go. But before we see Strider come up, we're going to see some guys come up out of Gwinnett, because Atlanta's bullpen has really gone through it recently. Jose Suarez threw 59 pitches last night through 3 innings, and a lot of people have said that he was Atlanta's best pitcher last night. 4 strikeouts, no runs across his 3 innings. I do want to point out, he did have 4 walks. He also had a balk and a wild pitch. Now, frustratingly, he did get more whiffs. He had 8 whiffs. He got more whiffs than Ronaldo López did. He got more than double the number of whiffs that Ronaldo López had. Did give up a hard hit ball, but just pointing out that, yes, no hits allowed, a couple strikeouts, but also some other things that weren't necessarily great. But he's going to be down for 3 days. So the question is now, what do you do from a bullpen perspective? And what's frustrating here, I'm recording this at 8:45 in the morning, Eastern time, on Wednesday. I believe that you're going to, the transactions are probably going to happen between now and when the show comes out. I've been told that Didier Fuentes and J.R. Ritchie are at the ballpark, are at the Stripers ballpark this morning. They have a day game. They are physically there. So I don't know if Didier Fuentes is going to get called up here or not. But you've got to figure out something. Ian Hamilton threw 31 pitches in his Braves debut, gave up 3 runs. Joel Payamps, it was a back-to-back, but still, he pitched the 9th inning. He gave up 3 runs. Because of the money attached to Pyops, I don't know if they're going to give up on him just yet. But I could see the Braves just moving on from Ian Hamilton. They finally called him up. They give him a shot. It didn't necessarily work. And so we'll see what happens. For tonight, and I'm going to get into it in the scouting report, obviously, but you have Robert Suarez. He hasn't pitched since Sunday. You have Dylan Lee. He hasn't pitched since Sunday. Tyler Kinley pitched on Sunday and Monday, but not last night. But other than that, just about everybody else got used. Aaron Bummer threw 10 pitches. That's now 3 consecutive games that Aaron Bummer has thrown. Now, it wasn't a lot in the first 2. 5 on Sunday, 3 on Monday, and 10 yesterday. But you got to count warm-ups and all that stuff. He's gotten hot 3 straight days. There's no way they use him today. He's got to be down today. So Jose Suarez is down. Aaron Bummer's down. They only threw Dylan Dodd 1 inning, which tells me they don't want to send him back to Gwinnett. They want him to stay up and stay in the pen. Because if they were going to send him down to Gwinnett, they'd have asked him to eat more than 1 inning, right? They'd have asked him to pitch more than 17 pitches. But I could see them moving on from Ian Hamilton and calling up somebody else. Maybe it's James Karinchak. Maybe it's somebody they think can give them length. You can't call up Hayden Harris or Roldy Munoz just yet because they have to be down there for 15 days. They could call up Hunter Stratton. Hunter Stratton's a guy that has been able to give them length in the past. So they could call up Hunter Stratton. I don't think they'll call up Daisabel Hernandez because of the length thing. Maybe they do decide to go with Karinchak. I just hope they don't need length. But I feel like they're going to want somebody they feel can give them multiple innings, and Hunter Stratton can do that. Maybe it's a guy like a Taylor Scott. Karinchak, Taylor Scott, none of those guys are on the 40-man roster. So you have to make a roster move here. But you can add a guy to the 40-man roster either if you DFA Hamilton, which is the only way to get rid of him. He has no options. You have to DFA him or injured list him. You can make a 40-man spot that way. You can make a 40-man spot by moving Hurston Waldrop to the 60-day IL. They've used that option for everybody else that they realistically can use that for. Ha-Seong Kim's the only other guy that you might consider moving, and that would put him out until the end of May. And the fact he's supposed to do a sim game this week tells me you're probably not going to need him. You probably want him to get a full-length 21-day rehab assignment. You might be able to just work out 60-day in him until the end of May. But either way, they've got to figure out something. You're going to see at least, I'm guessing at least one guy called up. I just don't think it's going to be Fuentes. I personally would not mind calling up Fuentes on the plan of, hey, if Martin Perez does well tonight and it looks like the pen gets some needed rest, right? Maybe Perez can go 6 or 7 or whatever. Maybe it's a close game and Perez goes 6 and then you do Kenley Lee Suarez or something. Maybe they go with Fuentes as the starter on Thursday's day game. I could see something like that happening. But you call him up, maybe you call him up for length today, and then, he's in the pen if you need length, and if you don't need length, maybe he becomes the starter tomorrow, and you push Sale to Philly this weekend. I don't know. But this is the hard part when you keep getting, and this is back to MLB's terrible schedules, when you keep getting all of these long stretches without an off day. You are in the middle of a 7-game road trip, towards the end of the 7-game road trip. And then when you go home, you've got 3 more. So you've got 10 games in 10 days. We all know you opened with 13 games in 13 days to start the season, then 10 games in 10 days. The Braves have had 2 off days all year. Just 2. By contrast, the Yankees had 2 off days around the first series. They opened on Wednesday night, that Netflix thing. They were off on Thursday. They played Friday, Saturday. They were off on Sunday the 29th. Then they had a series on the road against the Mariners. They had an off day. They flew home, had 3 against the Marlins. They had an off day. And then they had a stretch of 13 games in 13 days, and then they had another off day. Like, they've already had 5 off days this year. Atlanta's only had 3. And their last off day came a week ago. These are the issues you have in this kind of stretch when you don't get linked out of your starters. And it was either, I think it was right before the winter meetings. One of the press conferences Alex Anthopoulos did with us. It wasn't me. Somebody else asked about a 6-man rotation. And I remember using all of the quotes for an article, but he in essence talked about you can replicate it for a little while. And he specifically mentioned, as soon as something like this happens, your starter goes 1 inning, 1+ innings or whatever, you're in trouble. The whole plan's blown up because now you burn the pen. The pen's already working shorthanded. You have to make a bunch of roster moves. It's just not sustainable in any sort of length, unless apparently you're the Dodgers and Shohei Ohtani does not count as one of your 13 pitchers. That's a whole thing. CJ's been on social media, but it's bugged me for years. Shohei Ohtani does not count towards the Dodgers' 13-man pitching limit. He is officially considered, he's a 2A player, but he takes one of the hitter spots, not one of the pitcher spots. Anyway, you're going to see roster moves today. They're going to come out as soon as I'm done recording. That's how it always works. I still think if you won the first 2 games of this series and then you won tonight, I think it's almost a certainty you'd see Didier Fuentes get the start on Thursday. But I just don't feel like Walt Weiss wants to consider the possibility of not winning a series because they wanted to give Fuentes a shot and they pushed Chris Sale back. It was the same conversation we had in the Marlins series. Had you won game 1, you probably change up Jackie Robinson Day's game and you go with, you probably push Elder back and you do something else there and you push Elder to Philly. Same situation. We'll see the roster move sometime soon. Again, right after I'm done recording, they'll come out. I'll try to make a short for it and something so we can get the news out there and just understand that, sorry, this is not 100% correct on breaking down the moves. In just a minute, I got a question last night on social media about who I thought my biggest disappointment was. I think his name was Hunter. One starter, one reliever whose underlying metrics I'm most concerned about so far. We'll talk about that next, right here on Braves Today. Final segment of Braves Today. Something I forgot to mention in that last segment, and I hate when I do that. Braves are favored to win this game tonight. Braves Today sponsor FanDuel has the Braves as a 1.5 favorite over Zach Littell in the Nationals, and Littell's had a rough start of the season. So, there's an avenue there to win the game, be up 2-1 in the series by throwing Didier Fuentes. And that's only if Didier comes up and then the worst case scenario happens and he's bad, right? That doesn't, maybe he comes up and he's fine and you win the game. I think they feel confident that Chris Sale would win them a game if needed. Whereas you could see how it could work for Didier Fuentes. You could also see how it wouldn't work, right? So, forgot to mention that in the last segment. Hate when I do that. Let's get to Hunter's question. The pitcher, the starter, and the reliever that I'm most concerned about under the hood, underlying metrics kind of underperforming. Ronaldo López is the easy answer for the starters, and I kind of broke down some of what's going on there. And if I had to give an answer for a starter, I guess it's that. Simply because that's the obvious concern right now. I do want to give some credit on this, though. I'm going to kind of hijack the first half of this question, of this answer for Hunter. I do want to give some credit to Grant Holmes. So I wrote in mid-February, my favorite title of any newsletter I've written, Grant Holmes and the terrible, horrible, no good, very bad fastball. And in essence, the whole thing, 1,500 words or whatever it was talking about his four-seamer being one of the worst in baseball last year. He threw it 1/3 of the time, literally 33% pitch usage. He threw it 1/3 of the time. It was his primary pitch to lefties. It was his second most used pitch to righties. And it put up negative 14 run value, which was the 8th worst individual pitch among any qualified starter in baseball. There is what's called Arsenal tools, an Arsenal leaderboard on Statcast, where you can pull how each pitch rates on both a accumulation and a rate basis. So run value is an accumulation stat. The more you throw a pitch, the more opportunities you have to pick up or lose run value. So I was like, okay, well, maybe he just used it a lot compared to some other guys. So let's look at on a rate basis. So run value per 100 pitches. That came out to minus 2.2 run value per 100, which was the 7th worst mark. And I'm not really a believer, and I'm not the only one. There's a lot of baseball people who aren't really believers in a guy's statistics, his slash line off of an individual pitch. There's sample size issues there. There's game context issues there. There's a lot of stuff that goes into it. But the slash line against the four-seam fastball last year is just kind of hard to ignore, really. 330 batting average, 651 slug, 48.3% hard hit rate. Guys were obliterating Grant Holmes's four-seam fastball last year. I mean, it wasn't even close. It was getting destroyed, and that's why I think it got thrown 1/3 of the time. It just, he could not lean on it because it wasn't that great. This year, it has been much better. His fastballs, on the whole, are at +5 fastball run value, and that's everything. That is 95th percentile in baseball. But the four-seam fastball specifically, +5 run value. Almost all of his run value on the fastballs. Actually, no, I'm sorry, all of it comes on the four-seamer. And the run value per 100 pitches is +3.3. He went from -2.2 to +3.3 year over year. Now, it's still early. Clearly, he's thrown 159 four-seam fastballs. So there's time for this to normalize. And the hard hit rate is still not great. It's still in the 40s. He's allowed a 150 average and a 225 slug off of it. And if you look at the advanced stuff like the weighted, like the WOBA and all of that, it's still pretty decently low. Like it's still working for him, even in these kind of samples. And I know that in the spring, Jeremy Hefner was working with him on the four-seam fastball. I did a couple radio hits on Tuesday, and one of the questions I was asked, really good question I thought actually, was, what is Jeremy Hefner doing different from Rick Kranitz that has led these guys to be successful? And my answer, when I took a second to think about it, I had to filibuster for a second. My answer was, Kranitz did a really good job of taking established pitchers and understanding when to push a button, when to be their buddy, and strategizing with them to get them through an outing. He was really good at doing that. That was his, I'm not going to call it core competency because that makes it sound like he's the only guy that can do that, but that is a very valuable tool. And there's a certain type of pitching staff where you need things like that. And if you think about a pitching staff the Braves had a few years ago where you had old man Charlie Morton, you had Max Fried, you had these established guys, Spencer Strider was humming along, that makes sense. That's the right type of pitching coach that you need. Jeremy Hefner, we have no knowledge of if he's good or bad at that. But what he's been able to do with these guys is to give them tools. He gave Grant Holmes a sinker this year. Grant Holmes is throwing a sinker when he didn't have one last year. Bryce Elder now has the confidence in that cutter, and he learned a lot of it from Greg Maddux, but still working with Hefner on improving it and getting more confident throwing it to lefties and all of that. He helped Ronaldo López with the changeup, which was doing okay for him up until last night. Nothing worked last night. And so, that's been the difference for Jeremy Hefner. He tweaked the four-seam fastball of Grant Holmes, and all of a sudden, it's an above-average pitch now. And so, I guess my answer for Hunter is Ronaldo López. But I did want to take a moment to shout out the improvement that I've seen in Grant Holmes in the four-seam fastball. I still, ultimately, at the end of the day, think he's probably going to end up, his best and highest use is probably as that utility pitcher. And if you get a lot of people back healthy, you could do that. But that's where I am with Grant Holmes. For a reliever, underlying metrics, it has to be Aaron Bummer. It has to be Aaron Bummer. He is just a different guy now than he was when the Braves acquired him. His ERA is only 4.05, which it's the highest of his Braves tenure. It's not awful. But the stuff is just fundamentally not the same as it was when they got him. 2024, he was throwing 93, 94 miles an hour. His sweeper was his number one pitch, and he had a full 6-pitch mix. Sweeper, sinker, four-seam cutter, curve, changeup, a lot of lateral stuff. He's a side armor. Everything's going to be side to side. He's not going to do a bunch of vertical stuff with a 7, 10-degree arm angle, whatever. But last year, for instance, his primary pitch was the curveball. He cut the cutter completely. He cut the changeup completely. This year, he's brought the cutter back a little bit, but it's sinker first, followed by curveball. The sweeper's a third pitch. And it's the pitch mix keeps changing, but the underlying stuff is just not nearly as good. He's throwing 90.2 miles an hour on the four-seam fastball. I'm sorry, 90.2 on the sinkers, 90.8 on the four-seamer. And so, sidearm guys are always going to outperform the raw velocity number a little bit. What's funky arm slot guys, part of the reason you have the funky arm slot is because your velocity base and everything isn't where everybody else's is. That's just part of it. But having lost 3 to 4 mile an hour off the fastball just fundamentally means that he's more reliant on locations than he's ever been before. His first season in Atlanta, the stuff plus for his arsenal altogether was a 114. And that's with a curveball that was a 130, a slider that was a 123, a sinker that was a 108, and a four-seam fastball that was a 106. The only thing that was below average was the changeup, which changeups never grade well in Stuff Plus. That's, in his situation, that was more of a, you use the velocity difference, but the similar movement profile to miss a bat, more so than just the pitch itself being nasty. This year, and it's a smaller sample size, but Stuff Plus stabilizes really quickly. The cutter's an 84. The four-seam fastball went from 106 in 24 to 92. The sinker's gone down. It's still above average. It's a 104. The slider's gone from a 123 to a 108. The curveball's gone from a 130 to a 112. And so his overall Stuff Plus number went from 114 to 103. Still better than average, but average includes a bunch of starters and stuff. For relievers, this is actually a little bit below average. And the problem is, his locations have also degraded. He was at a 98 location plus in 24. He's at a 91 now. So his overall pitching score, which weights Stuff Plus and locations, is a 91. 9% worse than average. It's the first time in his career he's been below 100. This is the final season you owe money to Aaron Bummer. And I'm honestly kind of at the point where I think that's a good thing. I want to see him get back to who he is, and he can still be effective, especially the way Walt Weiss is using him. Walt Weiss is using him to come in and clean up a mess. Last night was the first time he pitched an actual full inning in a while. He's coming in with runners on base to get the ground ball and get him out of it. He did it against Philly. Turner was on first. Schwarber was up to bat. They went to Bummer. Bummer gave up. He got the ground ball, but it was a double down the line. Turner was held at third. And then he got Harper to ground out to Austin Riley to end the threat and stop Philly from scoring. Like, he's doing the job because they've changed what the job is. Walt Weiss is using him more frequently, but for less outs and in different situations. For the most part, outside of last night, Aaron Bummer's being asked to come in and face this dude. Face this guy, get this out, and we're out of the inning. And it's working. So credit to Walt Weiss for understanding what Aaron Bummer can and can't do. One of the worst things that ever happened to Aaron Bummer was Brian Snitker using him to open and sending him back out for a third inning, and he got blasted. Like, he's not that dude. He can't go 3 innings. He probably can't go 2 innings at this point in his career. But in the role he's being asked to pitch, he's really good at it. Now, do I love that you're paying $9.5 million for that? Not really, but it's the final year that he's on the books, and then he's out of here. So I guess for Hunter, that's my answer there. Thanks for listening to Braves Today. I know this has been kind of a background noise-filled and disjointed episode, and I apologize. There is no standard show tomorrow. Since Atlanta has a day game, they start so early. Literally, the debut time of the show would overlap with the start of the game. So there's no show tomorrow. I will still try to do a scouting report in the morning, and I'll try to make sure that I talk through the visuals enough so I can start uploading those to audio as well. I apologize to all of you on audio who have not been able to hear the scouting reports before the game so far. I'll work on that. But please like the video. Please subscribe. We'll see you next time on Braves Today.